Who is afraid of strategic war games about World War II? Well, I am, for example. They scared the tuna salad out of me. I like in general the idea of playing a war game that captures the complexity and the epic scope of World War II, but usually those games are monster games with an insane amount of rules, thousands of counters, so many maps that their fires are just, if you have them in your house, scary, really scary. But then I'd heard that Unconditional Surrender, which is a recent release by GMT, did a portrayal of World War II in the West, at least, at the strategic level, capturing a lot of the complexity of the event while still being learnable and playable. So I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a try. Learnable and playable. Yes, the game is both. Learnable, there are 50 pages of rules approximately. It's more than the rulebook for Dominion, but for a game that gives you so much, that has so much going on, it is really not much. It is a pretty economic system. The rules are also very well written. There are no obscure concepts. There is a very nice level, a very nice degree of redundance. Things are said several times over the rulebook. I didn't find it hard at all. It takes a while to read the manual, but it wasn't hard to learn. And the game is also playable. Sure, if you're playing the full campaign scenario, that's going to take quite a while. But it's playable in terms of, for example, the number of units that you have to deal with. The number of counters that end up on the board is pretty low when, again, you consider the complexity of all that is captured here. It is potentially all of World War II in Europe. I say potentially because there are smaller scenarios. You can just play the invasion of France or the invasion of Poland. But let's face it, when you have a game that can give you all of World War II, why would you not want to play that? Why would you not want to play the campaign game? It's like going to an all-you-can-eat barbecue restaurant just for the salad. Bad use of resources is what I'm saying. So this is a game that can give you all of World War II. It includes 2 or 3 factions, depending on the scenario that you're playing. Germany, Germany is always there. And then you may have the Western Allies and or the Soviet Union, depending on the scenario that you're playing. Anyways, learnable and playable, but still a big bad boy with a lot of stuff going on. So without further ado, I think it's best if we move on to the main part of my review, in which I will try to give you a sense of the main concepts and ideas in Unconditional Surrender World War II in Europe. This is the map for the game, or better, the maps for the game. These are 2 paper maps that you place adjacent to one another if you're using both to play the campaign game. In other scenarios that involve both, there are also smaller scenarios that only require you to use one of the maps, and this is why certain tracks, like the turn track, will appear twice, because in case you're using only one map, you still need all of your little cute tracks to record some information that changes throughout the game. The map represents all of Europe. It looks pretty neat to me, and what is good is that all the relevant areas of Europe are available. This is a game that is all about what ifs. What if a country that was not active in World War II becomes active? What if a country goes to a direction that it didn't go historically? For example, somebody who allied themselves with the Allies goes to the Axis, or vice versa. What if you want to attack and resolve a big maneuver through an area that wasn't used historically for that purpose? You can do it. You can try and do whatever you want here, and this is a great thing of this map and of the design in general. A very important thing on this map is weather zones. The map is divided in several weather zones. The weather zones are delimited by dotted lines, like the yellow dotted line that you see there. They are really hard to see, especially the first time that you look at the map, or when you start playing the game. Even just at the normal distance, you're sitting at the table looking at the map, they're totally hard to see. Of course, if they were more pronounced, I'd be complaining that, oh, they don't look nice, you can see them too much. There's always something that one can whine about when talking about maps. Here it is just a matter of practice. So here there is a dotted line, yellow line. Everything under and south of that line is desert zone. The weather is always warm, is always fine, fair. And the other zones delimitate areas in which the weather will act differently, in which it is more likely to have a certain kind of weather in certain periods of the year. So between the desert line and another line that starts from here, goes approximately here, goes northern Italy, southern France, this area here is the warm zone. Then you have another line that starts approximately, see, I lost it already, starts approximately here, goes up here, and then goes way north all of a sudden, like that, and then goes around there. This other area that starts very narrow here and then covers most of Central Europe is the mild zone, and everything north of that is the cold zone. At the beginning of each turn, you will roll a die for each zone, and you will place a marker on the weather conditions track depending on the result that you obtained. There's a table that you look at. In each, you simply cross-reference the zone for which you're rolling with the period of the year, and you have the weather, which can be fair, can be poor, can be severe. This is probably the single most important roll of the turn, simply because so many things change because of weather conditions. And if this seems to bring too much randomness to you, of course, you can just cheat. You can just choose your own weather. You can choose to set the weather historically. You can choose what if scenarios, what if a certain winter was colder or not as cold as it was historically. Again, the sky is the limit here. This is a game that is bursting with possibilities and potentials that are just waiting to be explored. The sequence of play flowchart is one of the many play areas that you have in this game. It is good to have them with a game of this complexity, and they are very well designed. They really help you play the game a lot. Now, we'll use the sequence of play flowchart to get a sense of how a turn works. A turn starts with the weather phase, when you roll to see the weather in each zone. Then declare war phase. This is one of the ways in which the game factors politics into the experience. This is when countries may declare war on one another if certain conditions are met. When it comes to political events, you have to think of them as sort of like branching trees of decisions. If you decide to do this and certain conditions apply, then actions B and C become available. Then later you decide to do C and condition D applies, then another range of options becomes available. Countries may be attacked, may be dragged into the war. You may try not to trigger a war with a country, and the country, because of certain rules, may end up attacking you nevertheless. It may seem daunting at the beginning, but it is really not. Just start playing, follow the events, the political events as they come, and you will see how they follow one another. They generate each other in a very fluid, very organic way. After wars may have been declared, and you see which side a country joins, so this is when countries activate, then you have the economy phase, during which you have to figure out the production of each active country. Each active country has a number of factories, and you place a marker on this track to keep track of how many you have. Those factories may be lost because the opponent takes control of the area in which they are. They may be lost because of strategic warfare, and you will have a marker here that goes up if the opponent wages effective strategic warfare against you. There's a phase in which you may try to affect the production of your opponent, and that is based on certain actions that you may take. For example, the Western allies may bomb the heck out of German factories. Control of certain locations on the map will affect the production of the opponent. So there might be a marker here that indicates extra factories that you cannot use, but silver lining here, there may be other factors such as a land lease that give you extra resources. So at the beginning of the turn during the economy phase, you take your factory count, you subtract the factories that you lost, you add the extra factories that you may have, you multiply the number by the multiplier that you see here, which is ×2 for many countries, and that tells you the number of production points that each country receives that turn. At the end of the count, Germany has 13 factories that are available, then ×2, Germany has 26 points for the turn. It's use them or lose them. You use the points for that turn, and production points are used to perform most actions available in the game. The ones that you don't use are lost. Next turn you have to calculate production points from the start again. After the economy phase, we have the strategic war phase, in which you resolve a strategic combat, which again may affect your production, that of the opponent. And then the strategic movement phase, when players may perform strategic movement. Then you have the main phase of the turn, really, which is the operations phase, when military units move and attack on the board. We'll talk about that later. After they have acted, you have to check for supplies. Units need to be able to draw a line of supply to a valid supply source. Once units have acted, that is when the effects of no supply take place, of not having supplies or being in low supply. Replacements, when you spend production points that you have saved from the operations phase to improve units on the map. You can reduce units back to their former glory. You may remove sorties from naval units and air units. We'll talk about that later. Because you need to spend the production points to activate units, you have to figure out how many units you want to activate and how much production you want to spend to improve units on the board. Upgrade phase, in the scenario some units will be upgraded over time. They learned important lessons during the war. Mobilization phase, this is when you spend production points to mobilize new units. That is when you bring new units onto the map. Again, you really need to be careful to save some production points for these two phases here. Super important. Diplomacy phase. Earlier on in the game, there are ways in which you can affect the diplomacy, trying to get countries on your side or to prevent them from going to the opponent. There is a super mega uber clever system to handle diplomacy. One that, incredibly enough, also works well in solitaire play. It's so hard to simulate the diplomacy where you're just talking to yourself. Well, it works here because diplomacy is handled by manipulating a cup where there are political markers. You can spend production points to add markers to the cup, to draw markers to the cup, so you may spend points to improve the cup, so to speak, to worsen the situation. Because if you choose to draw a marker from there, then you're actively pursuing diplomacy, and depending on what you draw, there may be no event, a political failure, then the opponent gets an advantage, political success, you may successfully influence a country, and then it is more likely that the country will become one of your allies. So, for example, if you don't want the opponent to do such stuff, then you add no events, and if you want to get a political success, then you try to draw as much as you can. Area seized, this applies to the Soviet Union, which is trying to get in quick control of the Baltic states and other areas in Eastern Europe. As I said, I don't know of another game that allows you to have a perfectly, quote-unquote, believable, fulfilling, nuanced system of diplomacy that you can play in solitaire, where you have unpredictability, where you have, I would call it fog of diplomacy instead of fog of war. You try to influence a country, you don't know exactly how they're going to react. Love it. I love this. The diplomacy phase, however, don't get too attached to it because it doesn't last for the entire game. Once total war breaks out, it's time to do the fighting, enough with the talking. After the diplomacy phase, if you haven't skipped because you're so busy turning Europe into a pile of ashes, then you go to the victory check phase and then the end of turn phase. Now the operations phase, when units move, attack, and do their thing. This, of course, is the main thing of the turn. Look at the counters. Do you notice anything strange? There are no numbers on them. Oh, heresy. I really could not figure out before playing the game how is it possible to have a war game with no numerical factors on the game. And yet, this is it. It's done. It works. Units may be air units. There are various types of such units, fighters or bombers, as indicated by the name and the illustration. You have naval units, which may be convoys or fleets or air carriers. Leg units, tanks, and mobile units. Some units have a little star there to indicate that they are high quality. Pretty much the only information that you need really is the type of unit that it is, leg or tank or air unit, and if it is a full strength or reduced strength. Most units have 2 steps, full strength, and then if they take a hit, they are reduced to their reduced side. Some units only have the reduced side, they are garrisons, and so they never get better than they are at the beginning. And that's, wow, incredible, huh? Pretty much all you need. How is that possible? Well, for example, you do not need movement factors printed on a counter when you know that all leg units have 8 movement points each turn and that everybody else has 10 movement points. Done. Now you're wondering, how about combat? We'll talk about that when we'll cross that bridge when we get there. When it is your operations phase, you can activate a lot of units, none of your units, in case you want to save your production to do other stuff. To activate units, you spend production points. To activate land units, actually. So you activate a unit, pay the cost for production points. Units that are activated can move and or attack. If you choose to move a unit, then it spends movement points as it goes on the map, depending on the terrain that it enters or crosses. When you move adjacent to an opponent, you enter the zone of control of that opponent, and you can't progress further unless you figure out something to do. You can just stop there and end the activation for that unit, activate another unit, keep doing that. Or you can launch a mobile attack by spending extra movement points. You resolve the attack, and if the attack is successful, the opponent retreats, you can advance, and unless the result that you received from the combat table tells you that you cannot do anything else, then you can keep spending movement points and you can keep activating your units. So some units can activate, well, it can push you combat several times during an activation. So sometimes you will want to launch powerful, mighty, coordinated attacks, and sometimes, especially with tanks, you may want to have them run and attack a lot of people and open a big gap in the lines of the opponent, and then you will send in, for example, infantry to fill in the gaps. Now, as I said, you can perform mobile attack, or you can simply end your activation there and place an assault marker on the unit. The unit is preparing for an assault. And then you maybe will move another unit and place another assault marker there. The point is that you can pile up units around an enemy unit and then resolve a coordinated assault. In this case, you only have one attack instead of possible multiple attacks that you have in mobile combat, but of course that single attack has higher possibilities of success because of all the support that you receive. Combat. When you resolve combat with the activated unit, or units, you declare combat. Can be, as I said, an assault or a mobile attack. And you have to choose secret if you're going to commit extra resources. That is, if you're going to commit air support and or special markers. There are a lot of these little special markers that will grant you benefits during the game. They're added during the scenario. They add not only extra decisions that you can make, but also historical flavor, because the number of markers that are available changes throughout the game. And you have to choose if you're going to commit to some of these at all or not. You do it secretly. This is the only secret element in the entire design that may make solitaire game playing challenging, but guess what? If you just don't do it, if you just choose for both sides, as you're playing both sides to the best of your possibilities, the game works just the same. If you can stomach that, then simply roll a die and decide if a side is allowed to commit markers or not. So, it's supposed that you're decided to, then players commit markers to receive benefits. Also, players can commit air units to support. Suppose that this unit is attacking that unit and I want to activate that unit to lend support. I can lend support with an air unit up to 5 hexes away. If only one side commits a unit, an air unit to support a combat, then I place a sortie marker on the unit. Suppose, however, that both sides commit air support, then the resolution of the land combat is interrupted for a bit, because first you resolve air combat between the air units to see how many sorties they get. 1 is the standard number that they get each time they activate. They may get more as a result from combat. Suppose that, for example, this poor unit gets a 3 sortie result. And the result of the combat also will tell you if both sides or only one side will manage to lend support to the land combat. Pretty much you're trying to use markers, to use position, to use combination of units on the board, to use their support, to get modifiers, to get good modifiers to the combat that you are about to resolve. As for sorties, the more you have, the worse your units are. You can have only up to 6. A unit that has 6 sorties on it cannot activate. You need to reduce them by spending production points. Also, sorties give you negative modifiers as you're resolving air combat. About air units as well as naval units, another thing to say is that they can activate multiple times during a turn and that they can perform a vast range of operations. Convoy units may transport units just to move them around or to perform amphibious invasions. Air units may escort convoys, may attack other units to add sorties. A lot of things that they can do. Allied bombers may bomb Germany. Incredible range of things that you can do. Great flexibility there. The currency that you spend is sorties. You do not spend activation points for land and naval and air units. You spend sorties that you need then to reduce during the production phase. I like that a lot. But the most astounding thing in this game is the combat results table. It is astounding because you have one combat result table which effectively simulates all types of combat in the game. Strategic combat that affects production, ground combat, air and naval combat, and all the varieties of air and naval combat that you may have. It's incredible. How is it done? An incredibly economic way. Simply, each player totals all of the modifiers that they can get from the situation. For example, a Germany unit gets a +2, France, UK, USA +1, everybody else, no such thing. +1 if the unit is elite, -2 for reduced strength, -2 for low supply. Modifiers that are based on weather, which represent the effectiveness of shock units and tank units depending on weather. If the opponent is isolated, there is a bonus for you to attack that. Attacking a unit in poor weather is a pain because you get a modifier there. Other modifiers of this type based on terrain, air support, and then event markers, which are the ones that I showed you earlier, such as these ones. Like this one gives you a bonus. Each side calculates their own modifier. So you may have one side which is a -2, the other one +4. And then, there may be other modifiers also based on, say, assault attack, which is the coordinated attack by multiple units. Then you got other modifiers based on the units that are supporting you. Amphibious invasion has yet its own set of modifiers. There are cases of severe impediment to combat in which you will need to divide a modified result after you roll by 2 If one or more of a side's ground units has no supply, a unit is defending in or attacking in severe weather, and attacking a ground unit that occupies a fort. Once you have the modified result for the attacker and the defender, you look at this miraculous table and you see the result, and then you read the result on the corresponding result table. So this is the box to interpret ground combat results. You're resolving ground combat, you get a DR. Then you look here. You're resolving air combat, you get a DR, then you look at this part of the player rate. Then also, depending on the type of air combat, you look at this other part of the table that tells you of additional effects if the combat happened to resolve air support, if you were escorting somebody, if you were trying to interdict somebody, which is when a unit activates out of turn to try to interdict the movement of an enemy unit. And the same applies here. If you get a result, when you get a result from the table, after you applied the modifiers for strategic combat, then you simply see what happens here. And air and naval combat, again, has its own modifiers based on different sets of circumstances. You see there are letter results, you simply read the result. And there are also number results, and those usually apply only to naval and air combat, and they indicate the number of sorties that one of the sides will receive from the combat. So performing poorly in combat gets a unit more sorties, if it is a kind of unit that does receive sorties. Results may be defender retreats, defender is disrupted and retreats, eliminated, nothing you haven't seen before. But what is amazing is that to get here, you're going through such a linear process. Yet, yes, the number of modifiers at the beginning may seem a little hard to digest, but in a couple of turns, it becomes very familiar. You look at the situation, +2, -1, +3, 0. It's that simple. And when you think all that you have, all forms of combat in World War II reduced to one table, and they still feel right. These different types of combat still feel reasonably historical and definitely exciting to resolve. Well, I think you have a little miracle here. Wow, wow, wow. What a great game. This game is absolutely outstanding and impressive. A game that gives you so much, that achieves so much with such a relatively lean core of rules, to me is just fantastic. This is exactly what I would want from a game. I'm willing to put in the effort, to invest the time and the energy to learn a big rule book, but I'm not that OCD, I'm not as obsessed to learn 150 pages of rules, which sometimes are just a list of small different things. Here you have 50 pages of rules, but the concepts are well interlocked. The concepts are very organic. You see a general philosophy behind that abstracted things as much as possible while still retaining the flavor, retaining the historicity, and while really putting the stress on the theme. The rules, once you become familiar with them, just feel like second nature, and you see the theme shining and pushing through them. You see history come alive. You see different possibilities that you can explore. The fact that things can go in so many different ways, that you can try with different strategies, with different approaches in all aspects of World War II. You can act diplomatically differently from the way things happen. You can act militarily in different ways, attacking earlier, later, different countries in different order. You can spend things on production and push an attack and reducing your production, or try to be more conservative, but then maybe you missed the train on some other option, some other windows that closed. Everything fits together. This is World War II in the most unbelievably live, vivid way that I personally have experienced. This being said, I haven't played some of the classic big monsters, but to me this is a game changer, no pun intended, or maybe it was intended, what do I know? It changes things. You know how sometimes they ask you, what if you were on a desert island and you could only bring a game? Usually I try to avoid answering. I pretend that I have to go, or just that I pass out. I just figure something out to evade the answer because I don't like it. I may have an answer now. This may be the game that if I can't play anything else for the rest of my life, this game will keep giving me stuff, will keep giving me challenges. Playing with the same strategy with different weather, then you have a different situation. A country, Italy, goes to the Allies instead of the Axis. That changes a lot of things. The replay value is astronomical. The what if potential is off the charts. I love this. But again, a game that you can play many different ways wouldn't be all that worth it if those ways weren't all engaging. And this is a game that is just so engaging. As I said, it really puts the theme, puts the story and the history back into the experience. Instead of just obsessing about the rules, it obsesses, if that is the right word, about the richness and the depth of the experience. Combat is fun. The way in which all the elements of the game work together, diplomacy, production, and the military aspect, just work perfectly well. And within each game, and mind you, games can be long if you're playing the campaign game. Within each game, there's just so much variety. Things change so much. Part of the map become more interesting than others. Parts are kind of like dormant. During different parts of the year, you need to act in different ways. You have severe winter in Russia, and Barbarossa halts and slows down to a grind with maybe some desperate Russian counterattacks. Then you have again powerful blitzkriegs. National will, that is something I didn't talk about in my main segment. Certain actions will reduce or lower the national will of the countries. There's a track where you record the present level of national will, and reducing the national will of an enemy is a necessary condition to conquer the country. Then you may force countries to make peace with you. You may take complete control. So much stuff that can happen. And as I said, during the game you have different seasons that happen that create different conditions, present different challenges. Maybe you can plan ahead and try to concentrate actions in the south during winter, as attacking in Karelia or attacking in Norway or on Leningrad may not be that great of an idea in January. Or you may simply decide for those turns to stop the actions, to build new units, to mobilize things, to move strategically things around, to replenish your units. So many options. It's hard for me I can't list them all because there are just so many, and I still then wouldn't give you a sense. Maybe it's better if I live this, the unexpressed sense of enormous potential that you can explore with this game. History is here and fun is here. What else can you ask from a war game? I don't play many monster strategic games, but when I play one in the future, it is like there will be Unconditional Surrender. What an absolutely incredible game. I cannot recommend it highly enough to serious war gamers. This is not an introductory war game by any means. This is not an entry war game. You do need to be a little serious about wargaming. Some previous experience with wargaming is desirable, but some of the concepts are really just so new that only some of those can be transferred here. But if you're in that mindset, this is not a game that is hard to pick up, and it is just such a joy to play. Leave it set up somewhere for the campaign game, play it solitaire, an hour here, 6 hours there. You will have put in 40, 50 hours into the campaign game before you know it. And you will have had such a mind-blowing experience. You will have developed and enjoyed a narrative of such complexity that just, wow, phenomenal. Usually I don't play games of this type because they scare me. This one didn't scare me. I fell in love completely. Definitely one of the best games of 2014. Maybe the best one. I can say that yet, otherwise I will give you a big spoiler for my end of the year video about the best war games of the year. But definitely a great game to me. Instant classic. Unconditional Surrender. What a game. Give it a try. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to the world of wargaming.